Welcome to the Theory of Conspiracy. My name is Michael. As always, I am joined with Roll. And today we have a special, if you might be noticing this on Monday that you're listening to this, and it's on 9/11. So we are going to be talking about 9/11 today. But first, as always, we're going to talk about some current events. So Rolando, why don't you get us started on the current events?
Yes, so it's been all about Maui, Hawaii, the fires that have ravaged the little island of Hawaii here. And there's been wild things that keep coming up. We've been talking about it, it seems, every episode.
So
but
wild.
I wanted to discuss the further, they keep talking about the energy weapons, the space lasers, the directed energy beams. But why don't we talk about the color blue and what the color blue has to do with these things?
Yeah, so what I saw, and these are on like TikToks and not mainstream media, Instagram, Reels. You go on some Reddit threads. You can find some stuff there as well. On X, formerly known as Twitter, stuff like that, where people keep on seeing in Maui that blue, anything with this certain shade of like royal blue, is not getting burned. Like along with it, and there's pictures of it. We're talking like
Cars,
umbrellas, houses with their roofs. They've gone as far as to say that the elites painted their roofs that color so that their houses wouldn't be burnt down, stuff like that. So it has to do with, in the theory, of course, the laser not being able to basically start up, like burn that certain shade of blue, like it reflects it or something like that. Is that what you're seeing as well?
Something like that. It's some sort of blue beam that doesn't interact with the color blue. Perhaps
is that Project Bluebeam? Is that
right? Like something that we just discussed the last episode. But yeah, so there's that video that you mentioned where they're actually showing a laser going through these different, it looks like color fabrics, and it's burning green, burning yellow, burning the other colors, but it doesn't do anything to blue. And that they're stating that this is some sort of effect of the laser, that it won't impact blue, and that the people who are in the know somehow painting their houses blue to not get burned down. Which I don't understand that, because it's still hot, I'd imagine, in that whole area. So things like that, even if you're like not being, the laser isn't going to get me, but the heat will surely get you. So just, like if you're the guy wearing blue that day and you're in that, it's not like, haha, I'm impervious. It's like, no, you're still surrounded by heat. So but it's
in flames. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing.
Right. Yeah, you can't stop flames from getting the color blue, but it's been everywhere. As you mentioned on X, you go through. There was one I was watching where some guy was like, "Oh, my conspiracy theorist friend, is trying to say lasers are doing this," and I think he's an idiot. So let me show you. And then he has this little cardboard box and wood, and he's pointing the laser on it, and it sets it on fire. And he's like, "Oh," which seems dumb to me. Like it seems like a setup experiment. But he's like, "Whoa, I guess the laser does burn the little cardboard up." But all the comments were like, "All right, now try it on the color blue." And it seems like this blue idea is taking over, the Maui conversation somewhat, where a lot of people are saying that, look into the blue stuff, look into the blue. So it's just a very unique new thread of this whole Maui thing. And of course, going into the climate change stuff, there's been fires happening in other countries here. So we'll see where it's going. But the other thing I want to talk about is the death toll here. I think the last time we spoke, it was around 80 people that were identified as being killed in this, but
right.
We talked about being higher. The most recent was about 115 or so, which, still people, the locals are saying that this is very underreported. Yeah, and that there's a ton of missing people. And one of the strangest, I guess, instances coming out of this is talking about that there's thousands of kids that are still missing. So we talked about how the alarm system that is supposed to be specifically for this was not turned on that day. But there's this idea, or there's this thing I've been reading about, how is that all these kids were dismissed during this, the winds that were going up. They were sent home while their parents were at work, apparently. which is still like a weird, like maybe that we don't have all the details there, but they were all sent home, and that these kids were, burned in their homes alone, and that there's thousands of kids that are still missing, that no one really knows what's going on there, and that the death toll can be way higher, especially in regards to the youth there.
So where are you getting those reports from when you're looking up stuff like that, and where it's just coming across X? Is that what's happening, or?
Well, this one here, these are actual sources there. This is The Hill talking about many children likely among the 850 people still missing. This is one from EV Magazine, more than 2,000 children from Lahaina Public Schools. So sometimes I may be exposed to random ideas from the Twitter or Instagram, and then I'll try to cite those articles through threads there. And you don't always come up with concrete things. It's just more ideas, but you see that the ideas are more than just some like guy in Twitter, putting out some stuff or TikTok and such. But so I don't know if there's anything to it, but it's something still being talked about. It's something you're still seeing locals talk about on that.
Well, if locals are saying that their children are missing, they would know if their children are missing, right?
Yeah.
So what are the reasoning? What's the reasoning behind why they're still missing? They were at school when all this happened.
Yeah, that they were sent home from the schools, and I don't understand that. I don't understand why, if there's a natural disaster one, that you would say, okay, kids, you can't stay here and go home. But that's something I keep reading about, is that they for some reason sent these kids home, and then it talks about, while the parents were at work. Well, if there's a thing happening, why would all the parents still? I don't know. It just seems like there's either some missing information there, maybe just people's emotions and things like that. But that's how I'm reading it, that these kids were basically on their own, separated from the parents at home, and they haven't been recovered yet. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the
ramifications are.
The ramifications are, who benefits. If it's a disaster, and it's why underreport it. If there is that many people, I'm not.
Yeah, you would think you would want to get the word out, to help find the kids or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not sure there. I'm not sure why you'd want to, if this is a disaster of the highest proportions, why only say it's 100 people when it could be 1,000 people. So I don't know. I'm just kind of spreading the misinformation like everybody, but it's just something I hear about.
Well, you're relaying what you're seeing in these articles too.
Yeah, ideally it's not. Hopefully it's just rumors and things like that, but it's just an idea that has not gone away. And as you see, as more of my feed gets talked about with the Maui stuff, I keep seeing the color blue and these kids and wondering what is going on here. And of course, the president went out there to see those videos. It was about 2 weeks after all of the events happened. And
said some dumb shit.
Yeah, he said some dumb shit out there. Yeah. Yeah, and the people there did not take too kindly to it. He fell asleep during a conference they had. Just not a good representative of our country there.
Yeah, I mean, regardless, high-ranking officials in general are just, it just drive me crazy. He said something about a personal house fire he had and was comparing it to it.
Yeah, he tends to throw his wife around and mention, "Oh, my wife could, she died she was in a car crash."
Yeah, right.
But he'll say, "Oh, my wife was killed by a drunk driver," and it's like, well, no, she wasn't killed by a drunk driver, because the guy who was just considered an accident, but kind of milks that for certain opportunities, which is
just a politician par for the course.
Yeah, just a downright dirty politician par for the course. Yeah. The last thing with Maui, unless you want to add anything else, and this will come up with our episode, is the numerical significance that the Maui fires happened on 8/8.
Okay.
I don't really know much about that. I'm not a numerical man, but just know.
I can piggyback off of that. I know and this is something that we should research, and I'm sure we will talk about Maui again, and maybe the next episode we'll have more information for you. But there's a significance. I've heard that the indigenous people from the island, there's a significance to that number as well, like with their rituals and their meditations and stuff like that. So I just piggyback off of that.
Yeah, it's, from what I know, it's supposed to be a powerful combination, because the 8 is sort of like infinity. It loops in on itself, and that the combination of 8/8 is supposed to be, combined to mean like superiority and wealth and things like that. So how this plays into this,
numerology conspiracies, which is his own little subdivision of conspiracies.
Yep. And since we're going to talk about 9/11, it's just one of those things where people say this has something to do with it as far as how either the universe works or how the elitists communicate with their rituals and what they, their spells or whatnot. But I don't know, just 8/8. Just it is.
So let's get into 9/11 because it is the anniversary of 9/11, and I remember it. I mean, I remember where I was when that was what's the significance of 9/11? Let's get into the numerology first.
Yeah.
Let's get that out of the way, and then we'll talk about where we were at and go into some of the conspiracies surrounding it.
So real quick with that. So I woke up today and looked at my phone. I woke up at exactly 9:11 in the morning. I took a screenshot and I sent it to you. I was like, hey man, I just woke up. This is kind of tripped out. So that's my significance there. But I want to talk about where we were that day because 9/11, we were both two young men here, but this is something that happened in our lifetimes. It wasn't like a JFK where we are just,
remnants of it. Right.
Yeah. Remnants, talk about people or, the Pearl Harbor. This is something that we saw the events happen. We saw the world change and things like that. So I want to just paint a picture of the year 2000 really quick for some of the young listeners who know about it. And it's interesting that's, what is their perception of what happened on that day?
It was 2001. Wasn't it 2001?
Yeah. 2001 is when it happened, but I want to paint a picture of 2000 leading up to it.
Oh God, I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 2000, right, Y2K, this idea that maybe the world was going to end or that the digital Armageddon, things like that didn't quite happen. But what did happen in 2000 was an election between George W. Bush and Al Gore. So we had just come off of 2 years of Bill Clinton being president, and we were going to have a new president, either a Democrat or Republican.
8 years. Yeah, it was a long time.
Yeah, 8 years. Did I say 10 years?
You said, yeah.
It's 4 years a term, 8 years, yes.
2 terms, yes.
Two terms. So Al Gore was the vice president of Clinton. He was running on the Democrat side. George W. Bush was a Republican. His daddy, George H.W., was just president
before Bill Clinton. So less than 10 years before we had George H.W. Now we have George W. So we were in for some change there. There's a lot surrounding that election as well, like the Florida vote count.
Yes, exactly. Remember Hanging Chads?
Yeah. Go into Hanging Chads for the listener, though.
Yeah. So if you thought the president or the election interference or controversy was just something that started with Trump, no, it was even before 2000. Yeah, it's something that goes around there, or accusations of cheating. But what happened was, this was a pretty close contest. Florida especially was around the controversy because in those days...
and Roger Stone, who was involved with Watergate and then again with Trump, but he was involved with going in and tearing it up with some other Republican men and demanding that the votes were counted, and they actually like, oh, okay, we will. They actually listened to him. Yeah.
So before the whole controversy with computers and corrupting that, there was paper, and there was the controversy of corrupting that. It was so for the young listeners, we had this thing called paper, and I guess you would actually punch out. There'd be a little, hey, Gore, Bush, and you would actually punch a little hole into who you want in this thing called a Chad. And I guess they were looking at these ballots, and there was Chads that were, I guess, multiple holes that were punched out, but one was, they'd have a hanging Chad, so they didn't really know who the election or who the vote was supposed to be for. And it was the wildest thing because, on days after the election, you should be able to certify the winner, and we still didn't know what was going to happen or what's going to happen there. The Supreme Court was then brought in, and they made the deciding decision on what that was. And that was a big controversy where they felt like the democratic process was thrown out because the Supreme Court put George W. Bush in office. And it seemed like it was kind of a dark period. I remember that because I was a big political guy in college. And his dad, I remember I was a young kid, but my uncle, who I was very close to, died in that first Iraq war. So
Right.
I felt a certain way about the Bushes, and there was this idea that if George W. Bush was in office,
We would go to
we,
war again.
we were going to go to war again. And back then, and we talked about the Democrats and
We had
Republicans.
one of the
Rose
longest
Clip.
like peace there was in our lifetime, at least.
Yeah, Clinton was just sending planes over to blow countries up, but he wasn't really sending troops over. And yeah, there was this idea that the Republicans were the war party, and if we had Gore in office, it'd be peaceful there. So that was a controversy. He was not a very popular guy during that first year. So he gets into office in 2000 or 2001, and less than about 8 months later will be the September 11th thing. One thing I remember with him, and maybe this will come back, is I remember he didn't really do much. I was always watching what this guy did. I remember he took the longest vacation like ever for a president at that time. I think Biden took him, where he was just on vacation. It was a controversy where it was like, hey, this guy's barely been in office and he's been on vacation for like 2 months at Camp David. And then he would come on the scene back on September 11th. So let's talk about where we were on September 11th.
Yeah. We had just previously graduated the year before, I believe, from high school. And I was going to start my job as a Hollywood video supervisor over at the local video store.
What's that?
I know. This is right when DVDs came out, guys. And
What's
DVDs.
that?
I know. VHS and DVDs were side by side. So
Wow.
I know. It was
Those
crazy.
were actually, I miss those places. But.
I miss them too, man. I really do miss going into the video store. That was one of the funnest jobs I ever had. But it was my first day. Being 18 years old, I slept in until like 11:30, and I wake up to my mother, who had taken the train back from Chicago. She's like, wake up. Like, you don't know what's going on. I'm like, what is going on? She turns on the thing. It's like a plane hit, the first building. And when did the second plane hit? I don't know if I saw it live or if I saw a replay of it, but
the second plane you would have saw live. The first plane wasn't quite captured on. Well, it was captured on video, but we didn't see that day. It was something the firemen who were doing a documentary that day happened to capture that. So
do you have a direct time when it hit, the second plane hit over there? Because I can't remember if I saw it recapped or if I saw it live. And I just want to confirm. But it was like 11:30 when I woke up. So if it hit, let's say after 12:30.
You were probably sleeping. It says 9:03 a.m., which was probably Eastern time. So it was like 10, about 8 a.m.
So I saw. So I turned on the. So it was live to me in the regard where the second I turned on the TV was the only thing playing across all channels.
Right. It would have been on loop, yeah.
And it was on loop, and I just see the second plane hit, and it was I guess it was a re-showing of it, and I just remember it just every 10 minutes just showing that. From different angles, or such and such sent in a thing, and we have the prime minister from Israel, and we have the prime minister from England, and saying and so that you just have a talking head, like a figurehead, saying how sad they were to see it all, and they didn't know who did it, and it was a whole, they had suspicions, and yeah, and then I went into work. I called, and because I was supposed to start at like 4, and so I just watched that for like 4 hours straight. And I called them like, "Hey, are we still open?" Because like they sent everyone home from the offices. There was no other planes flying in the air. Like if you were downtown, you were getting free shuttles back via the Metro in Chicago, back to your suburb or whatever. And basically for that whole, I'd say 24 to 48 hours, the only things that were open were like entertainment places and then like restaurants and stuff like that. But any office building was closed. And so I remember thinking, well, I don't know why I'm going to work. No one's going to want to, be watching anything other than this. And I was totally wrong. It was my first day, and it was the busiest day we ever had, and that I can remember, because everyone was just numb and just upset and just wanted to get their mind off it. So they came in and rented movies, and that was my day. That was
wow.
yeah.
That's interesting about the video. So yeah, this would have been my same assumption too, that everyone would be glued to the CNNs and things like that.
Right.
But perhaps yes, people wanted to get their minds on something else. Maybe watch a comedy.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for the share there.
What about you, buddy?
So September 11th, I was working for my uncle's construction company as a laborer, and I was actually working in a skyscraper downtown.
Oh shit.
Yes, kind of crazy one. So my day started early. I was probably up at like 5, was at the building at 6, and we would listen. We were in these basically like high-rise apartments and things like that. We would listen to talk radio, some music, things like that. I remember listening to it live when they said that, because again, I'm tied into George Bush. What's he doing? I remember them making a announcement that he was at a school in Florida and he was reading to school kids, and I remember that sticking with me because I was like, this guy, I remember him being on vacation. I haven't heard about him since then. And now he's reading to kids in Florida. That's weird. Just a mental note that I took. That's weird. So then that happened. The first tower was hit. And at first it seemed like it could have been an accident. We didn't even know it was a jetliner. I think most people thought it was maybe just like a private little plane.
Yeah. You heard a lot of that and when people would talk about it.
Yeah. And then when the second plane hit, you started hearing that America was under attack, that this was something coordinated, and we were able to see that live because we did have a TV there, and it was scary because there was other planes in the sky, and you were getting more information. The Pentagon was hit now, that there was other planes that were
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, the one that was down in Pennsylvania, and there were rumors that it could have been even more than that, and it ended up just being those 4. So we were working downtown doing the window installation. We didn't get sent home early. We were like, hey, do we get to go home? No, we still got to finish our job. I remember one of the most surreal things for us is that we ended up working a full day still. We got out at 5 p.m., which, if you know, in downtown Chicago means rush hour, means gridlock traffic. And it was empty. This was the only time I ever left on a weekday at 5 o'clock, and there was no one on the expressway. And we just went home. It was the quickest commute ever. And it was just kind of surreal there. It was really wild there. And then you, like everyone else, get home, you just get glued to the TV trying to find out more information there. And so now we're at 22 years later, September 11, 2011. Now we're nearing September 11, 2023. And there's some things that, officially the book is closed on, right? We know what happened, but there's still some questions and there's still some doubts. And I think one theme is maybe perception versus reality, because like a lot of things in this country, there's a divide, right? There's a 50% that still believe in this and 50% that believe in that, no matter what evidence is given to them. I think we're going to see the same thing with September 11 is a lot of people who had doubts then didn't, still have those doubts now. But there was some big conspiracy theory ideas that came out of that 2001. That's what we're going to talk about today, sort of how some of those hold up today, right. Spreading those ideas and sort of see if everything's been closed on this situation here.
Well, and to go on that 50-50, like you and I were divided with that. I was gung-ho. I was, at that point, that was the decision that made me join the Navy. I remember specifically like you getting really kind of deep into the 9/11 conspiracy stuff at the time. And like you did your first album recently after that, like it was pretty close after that. You did your album where you actually like sampled some of the shit that Bush said, which was I love that song, by the way, because I was not a fan, even though I was joining the military, but there was definitely a divide even then, that I just wanted to emphasize. And even among friends like ourselves that were like, we're not going to not be friends over this, right? Like you said something that I really liked that when we first started the show, it's like, it was about the Mandela effect. It's like, hey, and I think it could be put to conspiracy in general. Like if you're sitting around talking about stuff and like you're getting mad at your friends, you're doing, conspiracies wrong. You should kind of be open to what that person has said. I'm like, yeah, I don't really believe that, and this is why. And just be honest with them, and move forward. Or you'd be like, hey, I do believe in this, and this is why, So I think it really for us, I think that really kind of propelled us into those conversations personally.
Yeah, and that's cute what I said.
Yeah.
But right, ask questions. You shouldn't be at fault for asking questions there. And yes, what you're talking about was something called Rally Around the Flag, which happens in times of war, and that's something we saw in the U.S. here. So the terrorist attack happened. We were all unified in our anger. We didn't know what. We didn't know who did this. They started throwing names out there. Osama bin Laden. We just knew we need to stand together. And even though there was a president that we all weren't really behind,
we were all behind him.
We were all behind him now.
And we're all behind Giuliani. Look at how that's played out.
Yep. America's mayor, they called him. America's mayor, Rudy Giuliani.
And now we just got his mugshot a couple days ago.
Yeah. And you're right. The enlistments shot up at that time. Everyone was like, how can I help? What can I do? Right. And what happened is the U.S. said, yep, we're going to war in Afghanistan. And we just went, and there was still, wait, why are we in Afghanistan? And then we ended up going to Iraq. And then it was like, okay. And then it turned into, we're spreading freedom and, these helping.
It morphed, right? Because initially everyone was on board for Afghanistan, right? And then, okay, well, yeah, I get it. Osama bin Laden's in Afghanistan. We understand. Like, we got to go there. It's okay. It's not the country, but it's a sleeper cell of terrorists, or and that gets into the Warner Brown stuff, and all that stuff of his prediction of this is what's going to happen first, and all that stuff. But then I think even when I was in the military, we were kind of questioning, like, why are we going to Iraq? But it's like, no, okay, no, we're eating freedom fries for lunch. There was no French fries because they didn't back us on the Iraq war.
Yeah, if you weren't with us, you're against
us. Yeah. So, but freedom fries tasted an awful lot like French fries. I'm just gonna point that out there. But.
And then with the Iraq war, that became a conspiracy in itself, where they said we had weapons of mass destruction, and then it ended up they didn't really have weapons.
They found them, and then they didn't. Yeah, and they didn't have them, right?
Yeah, but then it was like, well, we're already here. We gotta just finish this out. And it's like, right. Yeah, I guess. So that's one of those weird things about September 11. All right, so let's jump into it. Let's get into it. So what happened on September 11 where it put us at a divide? So the two towers were hit by jetliners, and what is heavily contested there is how the towers fell, because everyone has seen it at this point there. The first tower that was hit fell, and it almost looked like, some people would say, a controlled demolition, the way it fell in on itself, didn't topple over. The second one fell just like that. So it brought in a lot of crazy ideas. Some people said that it may have been energy weapons, right? Like the same thing with Maui. Some people said it may have been explosives planted in the building, thermite, or explosives on the planes itself.
I personally heard the thermite. Yeah.
Yeah. There was the idea that jet fuel doesn't melt steel, and there was even, I remember there was a rant on The View by Rosie O'Donnell with that same thing there.
And that kind of put her career, because it wasn't the mainstream, she was like kind of blackballed for that a little bit.
Yeah, there was no legal.
There was some repercussions to it. Yeah, because she had like a morning talk show type deal, and that went away, and it was.
Yeah, so it may have taught people just shut up, don't say much there. So as far as that goes, so let's talk about loose change for a moment. You remember loose change?
Yeah, vaguely, but go ahead.
Okay, so loose change, and let's talk about conspiracy culture, because a lot of it grew out of this. Alex Jones, he did a wonderful
damn frog again.
Yeah. So we saw certain personalities sort of take off there, because there were so many questions with this. I think people didn't really like the information that was being given there, and there was questions about that. And there was a documentary called Loose Change that came out there, which was by some young men who had some questions themselves. And it was almost like a hip conspiracy documentary that came out, where there was like hip hop beats and boom, yeah, and there's controlled demolitions and boom, and they were talking about how there's these pockets of smoke coming out of the various windows and things like that, where they were alleging to this happening there. So as far as where we're at now, 23 years later, officially this has been thoroughly debunked. At least from the mainstream, right?
But there actually are like outside, other than the government, watchdog groups that have debunked this as well.
Yeah, I think the big one was I remember Popular Mechanics debunking it there. So what they're saying with the whole idea of jet fuel melting steel is that yes, jet fuel really can't melt steel. It doesn't burn high enough to melt steel necessarily, but it can weaken it. So the combination of the impact of the jetliner, the fire, that it created this sort of pancake. What do they call it? The pancake theory. What is it called here? It's not like the pancakes mom used to make, and it's not like the way we don't like our butts. The pancake collapse theory is that pretty much it weakened itself so that each floor and the weight compressed in on itself, so that when it fell almost at the speed of gravity, and that's why it felt like it fell. It wasn't that we needed bombs in there. It's just that this is what happens when the structural integrity is weakened, and that's the official story. There's still some people, there's even some engineers will say that's bunk, but for the most part, this is what is pretty much accepted.
Yeah.
There's still some outliers here, but any thoughts on that collapse, the controlled demolition, energy weapons?
Well, I mean, did we also cover the one where it's the plane didn't come through and the wing space, like you've seen those pictures where like
let's get in. Let's hop into that. We're gonna go into all these guys there. So there was a controlled demolition of the Trade Center towers. Okay. The other thing is the Pentagon attack. Now, the Pentagon attack, as far as the World Trade Center goes, we've seen the videos, and even the first one hitting, there's some video of it now. You didn't see it live, but there was a fire.
But some people say that video is fabricated as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, they say it's holograms. They say all kinds of stuff. That it was remote controlled planes. I think Alex Jones was pushing that one, that it wasn't really planes full of people. May have been remote controlled planes. Mm-hmm. There was ideas that the planes that morning were actually not as full as it should have been, because they've scrubbed the list and kept it down to certain people. And I mean, I don't know what the benefit if you're just gonna crash into the building, but that's some of those ideas that, oh, this is suspicious, there should have been more people on there. So with the Pentagon was hit that day as well. Some people believe that it was actually a missile that hit the Pentagon and not that liner. Yeah. The reason for that is because of the hijackers that supposedly did it, that they were not that experienced, that it was, they're quite amateurish. And there's ideas that the guy who crashed into the Pentagon did some sort of expert maneuvers, and the way he turned it, started going down the street, that there was light poles hit, and then he just hit hit the tower dead on. What kind of led to some of those conspiracy ideas is the fact that all of the surveillance footage has been pulled. Like, there was, besides being captured by the Pentagon, gas stations, restaurants, things like that, anyone who would have captured it, those have all been pulled. And 22 years later, we still haven't seen those. They've released that one frame where it shows the Pentagon, then it shows like a nose, and then it shows boom, explosion. And people have speculated that, that's been fabricated, that it's covering up a missile, that they haven't shown it because of the missile. They'll allude to the fact that if you look at the damage, you don't see, you would think maybe the wings would have been knocked off, or there'd been, gears and wheels. So they say,
or even if they hit and they disintegrated in the crash, then it would have, the opening on the Pentagon isn't wide enough if the wings would have hit it. That was another one.
Yeah, that it looks just like it's just not
straight on. It wasn't
right. So that is a theory that still persists to this day, that released a video, but the official story there is that it's consistent with the plane hitting. I guess it's hard to even know that. We don't. It's a jetliner been used as a weapon, but they say that yes, because of the speed that it hit, that a lot of it just disintegrated, and you don't see much damage there. But there,
let's get it all on the table. What about the other buildings that collapsed?
Are you talking about Building 7?
Building 7. Yes.
All right. So Building 7, this is it's not quite a tower, but it's a black building there. It housed a lot of interesting offices there, like the FBI and the just different offices were in there that were part of that.
Wasn't hit by a plane.
It wasn't hit by a plane. No, it's part of the. There were other buildings that were hit by debris from the tower. That I think the
Surrounding,
Hilton, the Hilton caught on fire. It didn't collapse, but it caught on fire from debris there. And this was another building that had caught on fire sometime during the day, which people speculate on this being a controlled demolition is the fact that it too collapsed. It had that
pancake like you're talking about.
Pancake, right. Yeah, where you see a building being demolished and it just falls in on itself so it doesn't topple. Yeah. And what was very interesting on that one, which made people go nuts on it, was that the BBC, there was a reporter being interviewed that morning who was saying, hey, building the Twin Tower 1 was collapsed and Twin Tower 2 and now Building 7 has collapsed. She had reported that Building 7 collapsed while Building 7 was behind her, not collapsed. And literally, as she's talking about it, it collapses behind her on the video. And they speculated that she had some sort of insider information about Building 7. And that's why she was able to report on it.
Either that or she was just given a script to read.
Yes. Or she just made a dumb mistake and they said Building 7 and that, just coincidental.
Right.
Officially, that's what they say happened, that it was just a coincidence. We made a mistake and it just so happened to, fall as she's talking about it, which, it's just, but that made people go crazy on how did they know? How did the BBC know?
Right.
Doctor Who?
Yeah, exactly. So you asked me the question. I just wanted to get it all on the table. Is there any more stuff that we can just get on the table beforehand so I can give my opinion and you can give yours as well?
Yeah. So those were the big ones there. We'll talk about just all of it. So those two planes hit, the Building 7 that wasn't hit, that just came down, Pentagon, and then Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was the other plane that had crashed down on that Flight 93. The official narrative there is that this was the other three had already hit. That the people of the plane knew what was going on. They decided that we're not going to allow this to happen, that they sort of ganged up, kicked in the cockpit door, got into a fight with the terrorists and the box cutters that they have, and that through this mid-air battle, the plane was pretty much turned downwards and crashed into the ground versus being used as a weapon against a building.
Yeah.
What has created speculation on the conspiracy theories are that they believe that the government, the military, may have actually downed that jet because of the fact that they were already being used as weapons, which I don't think many people would fault at that point. But there's that idea, or there's this idea that it wasn't a plane at all. The reason for that is because there wasn't much in the way of remains that were recovered at the site there. And that's something that persists to this day, unfortunately, not just at that plane site, but even in the building where a lot of victims' families have not been able to get the remains of their deceased there. So with this one, not much in the way of wreckage, not much in the way of human remains, and people have speculated because it wasn't there. The official story is that it hit with such high velocity and speed that they disintegrated. But some people will say, no, you can't just destroy mass like that. It has to go somewhere. So where did it go? Right. So
those are all of them, pretty much. There's more. I mean, but those are the main ones.
Those are the main ones as far as the damage that we've seen and some of the ideas there. I mean, I didn't really even go into the Osama bin Laden and his family connection.
We can definitely do that here in a second. But to answer your question though, I would say that the Building 7 is suspect more than anything to me. Like that was the one that always stuck out to me.
Yeah,
the most. Like that one was always the one that was like, I don't really believe any of this, but hold on. What happened to this building that was nowhere? it was in proximity, but it wasn't like it shouldn't have had the damage that it had. Like that was the one that kind of did that. I will say this. My opinion on this is that I think, I don't know if you ever saw that South Park episode where where they talk about it's a great episode, but that the government allowed these conspiracy theories to like kind of just run amok because I think it kind of shielded them and made them this like omnipotent, like overlord type like thing. And
it makes them look smarter than they really are.
They're not, right? Like it was pure negligence. Like I think if you look at when Bush is like sitting and listening to the kids learn their alphabet or whatever, whatever it was, read the book or whatever. I think his face was like, oh shit, I fucked up. And if you look at like Fahrenheit 9/11 or something like that, like there were high ranking, reports saying that there was an attack on the horizon and that we should take precautions to prevent this attack. And I believe that narrative. I think the government was negligent in protecting its citizens. And instead of doing that, they kind of dropped the ball. That's kind of my opinion, which I think is worse, if I'm being honest with you. Like I just think a lot of this stuff, they let this narrative run so that they can like, oh well, yeah, of course we're all knowing, and we orchestrated all of this. We're such a superpower, and I think it's bullshit personally. But anyway, what's your take?
There's two things I want to hit on with that, and hopefully I keep the ideas. So you mentioned Bush. One interesting thing, this is connected to Jeffrey Epstein and the interesting paintings that he has on his island. So there's this one famous one of Bill Clinton in a dress that some say means something. I don't know what it means. But there's another one that he had of George W. Bush sitting on the floor of the Oval Office, and he's playing with these paper airplanes, and on the floor, it's these two Jenga towers that have both collapsed, that some say allude to that he was, using paper jets and Jenga towers to, mean the 9/11 or something like that. So some Jeffrey Epstein thing. I just want to throw that out there just to mess with people's brains.
And those are actual paintings that they found, right?
Yeah, check it out. It's one of those weird things.
I've seen that too.
What does it mean? Maybe he likes playing with Jenga, but I've played with two Jenga blocks towers before, but I've never used paper airplanes. But I don't know.
So I'll say this, so that's my opinion, but also like my brain always hurts when I see like a really good 9/11 conspiracy. I'm like, wait a minute, what? But anyway, go ahead. I'm just saying.
The other thing I want to hit on with sort of what you're discussing, that was it allowed to happen? Are they omnipotent? Is the weird coincidences that have happened, because the day of 9/11, there were war games being played that day with NORAD. They're the guys who, let me go over what does NORAD stand for again. The North American Aerospace Defense Command. They're basically the guys who watch for things like this. They align, they're the ones who deploy jets in the sky if something's not right. They were doing war games that morning, and they were simulating this scenario. This idea, people were shocked. We've never thought about that, except that they had been planning for things exactly like that. There's documents where they talked about, jets being hijacked and thrown into towers. They were just talking about doing that to people in Cuba, hijacking jetliners and doing that to create, anarchy. So this idea has been out there, but the fact that they were playing war games that morning led to confusion, where people who were now being told, hey, there's jets that had been hijacked, they're off course, this has happened. People didn't know if that was real or if this was part of the simulation, which may have led to some of the confusion. It could be one of those odd coincidences, which is officially, it was just an odd coincidences, but in some conspiracy circles, they'll say, no, this was in preparation for a false flag event. But interesting nonetheless.
Yeah. I never heard that one. That one kind of blew my mind just now.
It was like I was looking at your face. Look into it there. I do have, let's see. Where are my? So yeah, you can look at the Wikipedia, United States government operations and exercises on 9/11. September 11, 2001, the NORAD was involved in an ongoing operation which involved deploying fighter aircraft to northeastern North America. They were conducting several military exercises. So yeah, and it leads into the Vice President Dick Cheney, where that they were saying he was in charge of it, coordinating everything, and that there was a stand down because of that. But yeah, just some interesting information with that. Don't want to say much more. Now, some other tidbits here is there's still questions to this day. I mean, it's not all thoroughly debunked and everything's
right.
Down. Like there's still
and I'm not saying that either.
Oh yeah, but I want to get into some of that. So the victims' families, there's still an ongoing lawsuit to this day because there was a document, an FBI report that was declassified by Biden, basically tying the 9/11 hijackers to Saudi nationals living in the United States. And that's something that's been an idea since then, where there was a Saudi connection, that some of the money actually came from Saudi nationals, Saudi families. So people were always wondering, okay, how is Afghanistan connected to it, the country, if it seems to be more Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia, of course, we have a deeper relationship with, because they got that Saudi oil and they got that Saudi money, but there was that connection that was never really explored. So now there's a lawsuit with the families of the 9/11 victims' families to find out more information and to see if the Saudi government may have played a part in funding this attack.
Yeah, I've heard that one as well.
Yeah, and that's still ongoing. So, I mean, 22 years later, the victims' families still have questions. So it's not just a conspiracy thing. It's something that people want to know about.
Right. And that's the whole thing, is that there is still information that's being withheld and that has not been given to the public. And that in itself, to me, is a conspiracy,
Yeah. One thing I wanted to hit on, there was an article, one of the filmmakers responsible for Loose Change, his name is Corey Rowe. He was a young man when he came out with the Loose Change documentary, which I guess spread a lot of this misinformation, as they say. He became a veteran. He still went to the Iraq War, because patriotism. Like yourself, he became disillusioned at why we're here. But people talk to him like, hey, do you feel bad about spreading these ideas? All this stuff you said, pushing these ideas about the bombs, it's all false. And yep.
No, I was going to say, like, I think part of it wasn't really disillusionment. Like, I feel like my time there was well spent and stuff like that. And I support the troops, like, more than anything. You know what I mean? I just want that to be heard as well, But I do have some disagreements in how the government moved forward with that. So, that being said, I think a lot of veterans that saw a lot more than I did personally, you would agree with that. You know what I mean? It's like, you can support your troops, but you really need to kind of question your government still, even if you are patriotic.
Yeah,
especially if you're patriotic.
Yeah. So with a good add on there, Mike, and with Corey, with I guess where his life trajectory went after the Loose Change, after spending his time in the Army, is I guess he started seeing an upswell of people who believed, hey, what you guys were doing, the Lord worked with this. But he said he became disillusioned with this whole conspiracy circus because of the direction it took with Trump and QAnon being tied to the pedophile rings, things like that, where I guess he wanted separation from that, where he felt like, there's questions about 9/11, but you guys are going way too crazy with this direction. I don't want anything to do with this. One interesting tidbit that I thought was pretty cool is a reporter had asked him, it's at the end of the article, do you feel bad for pushing information that has been proven false? And then Corey responded with, do you feel bad for working for an organization that passed on information that was proven false?
Damn, Swami. Yeah, he got him.
Yeah.
Got him.
Got him. But yes, I think we kind of went on a similar path talking about conspiracies, right? That, hey, it's okay to question it, but at the same time, hey, should you feel bad if you push something and it doesn't prove to be true? And then it's like, well, there's the media that also has pushed these ideas that are now proven false.
They get carte blanche. They get a pass.
Right. And I think specifically talking about the weapons in Iraq, and I mean, this is
it's a huge, and that came out of this, guys. That came out of 9/11.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people died. A lot of, we may have created terrorists in that process, because I mean, I would, if your family was killed by drone attacks and you're being killed by this idea that we're just trying to spread freedom to your country, and you see that there may have been insidious, perhaps gains there, maybe having to do with weapons selling and oil and things like that, which is still talked about.
Pick your poison.
Yeah. There's two last threads I want to hit on that I think are interesting here.
And I want to hear your take on all this. You got me. Yeah.
All right. So one thing I want to hit on here with 2000 or September 11. Do you remember anthrax?
Yeah, anthrax was big time.
Yeah,
whatever, and it was like
whatever happened to anthrax, right?
In theory, it was such a good thing to kind of use if you wanted to send a piece of parcel through the mail like that. I just remember that. I remember like it would always show up through the mail. There would be like some chalky or like baby powder, and it was this anthrax and would kill the whole room. Right? Yeah. It doesn't exist anymore.
It's not being used apparently, but it's something that it was such a big part of the September 11 issue until it wasn't. So just to talk about anthrax, in the weeks after September 11, right, we're gearing up for war, we're under attack. Letters started being mailed out to various politicians, newsmen, which had this white powder, anthrax, which kills you, and it killed 5 people in these anthrax related attacks here that were trying to be tied to Osama bin Laden, Al Qaeda, and I guess what was interesting about it is just how it kind of just fell off, where you didn't really hear the resolution, like what's going on. We're terrified. People were terrified of getting mail. People were terrified of white substances. I wonder if cocaine sales were affected. Like now we have fentanyl, but I wonder, like, man, it must have been. I don't know. Like, yeah. Am I off base there?
No. It probably wouldn't have been affected with them. They'd be like, I got this anthrax, man.
That's what they call it. Yeah, that's a good strain. All right, it's
like, I got that.
like, hey man,
be like, this will blow your brains out. This is called anthrax, homie.
Is this cut with anthrax? No, just cut with baby powder and anthrax. I mean, not anthrax. It's funny. So people, post workers were killed. So how, just to close that thread, because I just feel like anthrax isn't talked about anymore with 9/11 people. I just want to paint that picture of how scary 2001 was.
There was an awesome metal band that came out around that time as well.
Oh, they were around before then, Anthrax. Yeah.
Oh, goodness, nice.
So I guess what slowed it down was when anthrax started being researched, and that they found that it started coming from a government laboratory.
Bum bum bum
bum bum bum. The last thing the last thread is, I talked about this on a COINTELPRO episode really briefly, because I didn't prepare this information. I was just going off my mind here. But here's one article. The most high-profile Al-Qaeda plot foiled after 9/11 was an FBI scam. And this is something I mentioned with you, is that after 9/11, you kept hearing about how,
more tax.
Yeah. So there was this
DEFCON level blue, green, blue, orange, red, whatever.
Yeah. So the Patriot Act had just gotten passed. It basically, and there's overlap with COVID there, that this whole, like, would you want to have security or do you want to be free? We choose security. So there were certain rights that were given up there in the idea of protection, and people went along with that. Hey, I just want to be safe. I don't care if you need to be searched and patted down to go to the
You
plane
need to
make sure,
do your duty.
yeah, then that's what you need to do and all that. If your phone's records needs to be listened to by the NSA in order to make sure you're not a terrorist, then that's what has to happen. And that's actually what happened, as we found out with WikiLeaks and the Snowdens and things like that, that there is an organization that's listening to you. And but yeah, so this plot here, this is the Liberty City 7. So we found out that one of the biggest plots here, it was a terrorist attempt that was foiled here. They said that these workers in Florida were attempting to blow up U.S. buildings, including the Sears Tower. Right, we're from Chicago. But later, the Liberty City 7 case, it was found out that it was actually a plot that was started by the FBI. That the FBI agents sort of put these random men together through money and through all these things. Got them to be involved in this plot where they were like, okay, I'll go along with it, and then were later set up saying, we stopped the plot, but really it was just sort of staged by them.
Mm-hmm. So that makes me question if those men were actually if best case scenario, they were coerced into getting into a plot, or what was their role? Like, it'd be like, oh yeah, like that sounds great, Greg. Like whatever you say, buddy. And that was, it was the FBI agent like spewing his shit. And then it's just like, oh yeah, we got him agreeing with us. It's like, just get the fuck out of my bodega, homie. You're talking crazy, like what was actually true and what was actually false. That's what it raises that question to me, at least. That's all I'm saying.
Right. And that seems to be a lot of what came out of that it wasn't really that outside of the FBI, these guys would have just continued on with their lives doing normal people shit. And that through this mix of money and coercion, were wrapped into this, taking part in this plot that really never was. One of the former FBI agents who was doing the undercover work here said that if he told his superiors that he wanted to initiate an operation targeting individuals who did not belong to a terrorist group, did not have any weapons, and did not have a plot, and that the FBI would provide all of those things in the course of the operation, that they would have sent him for counseling. So he's basically just commenting on, like, there's really nothing here except just trying to perpetuate this idea that
not even frame, but like, just not
because
even frame,
because that was a big part of this 9/11 stuff, was that there are these terrorist cells that could really be anybody, mainly Muslims, but it could be anybody, and that at any time they can suicide bomb your building, your church, whatever they want. So be afraid of all times, snitch, and speak up. If you see something, say something. And that one of the biggest plots that was allegedly stopped was really not much of anything at all, just the FBI doing a bunch of trickery.
Yeah, that's well. Final thoughts, man, before we move on.
September 11. So I still have. There's just so many things. It was a transformative event that happened in the consciousness of us who witnessed it, in the laws that have affected us. Since then, we've seen that change there, and there's some people who were just born into that only know that way. In the role of the U.S. as policemen and having us involved in perpetual war, no matter what, if there's a Democrat or Republican in office, that's just the name of the game now. I do think this was something that, at the very least, exploited for gains as far as through the war efforts.
And regulating citizens.
Right, regulating citizens, the control there. It's often talked about that our biggest export is weapons, and you can't really sell weapons to the world if there's not wars going on. And this idea of we're just spreading freedom, and it's something we see in Ukraine now with the billions and possibly trillions of dollars that it's at now. As far as some of the crazier fringe elements of it, I think
we're in the same camp on that.
Yeah. I think there was a time where I could have almost believed that, because it was just so fresh and there's just so many questions with that.
Same, exactly.
But some of the crazier like Alex Jones, it just seemed like there was more work to it. Like, it's like, that seems like there's too many extra steps. Like, it was a remote control plane where there wasn't really people on it. The people were taken off and made missing later and blah, blah, blah. And then but it's like, that's a lot of work. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if I believe that, or the energy weapons. It was a laser beam, blah, blah, blah.
Well, I mean, the logic doesn't fit for stuff like that. It's just like, here's the reasoning behind it. Oh, we don't want these people to be on the plane, but we're gonna kill all these people in this building. Like, what's 40 more people that are in a plane?
Right. Why do
Yeah.
the extra steps? You're
Right.
don't value human life. You're going to kill them on a military base and get rid of them while you're crashing a plane into a building. I think they're going to die if that's the intention. So I don't understand the extra steps.
Right. And yeah, I just don't get the logic behind it. You know, and the thing is with the conspiracies and stuff like that, we always have to remember, like, there are people that their families were directly affected by this event, you know, and the same with Maui. You know, it's just, and, you know, our hearts go out to them and stuff. But yeah, So anyway.
Yeah. So I guess with that, I do think it was a terrible tragedy. I do think it was exploited for more regulations and changes to go through,
Which is a conspiracy in itself, if you ask me.
Yeah.
What about Building 7?
Man, I'm with you on that. That's wild. The fact that, because if you look at it, it's almost like a block away from it. And I don't
That's the one that keeps my toes in the pool, man.
Yeah, the Hilton, there was buildings that were hit heavily by debris that were pretty badly set on fire that were just, we lost a room here. This building, the fact that right, two ways they can go about it. Either you got to seriously rethink how we're making buildings if being hit with some little fires is going to cause the whole thing to collapse. Like, that's insane. Or was there not, or were, and it's crazy saying that, but were there not some sort of, a way to cover up evidence, if you wanted to, and using that as a pretext. So I don't know. I'm with you. Yeah, my toes are still dipped in the pool there, where I am like, that seems very.
That's the one that keeps me, like, it's like when I thought I was out and then they dragged me back in, right?
Yeah.
Quote The Godfather or whatever. It's just like, I don't know. I don't believe all the fringe stuff, but that's kind of fringe too. Building 7 is kind of fringe, So in the same time, I'm like, well, what about that? That actually happened, But anyway, that's just me. So.
Anything you want to add with any of this stuff?
I mean, as we're getting, I say this every week, guys. It's not just because it's 9/11. Have a healthy distrust. And anything else from you, Rolando?
Man, I think there's nothing wrong with debating. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. Sure. I think, with 9/11, it was something that we were all humanized and realized we're all Americans, and how frail life can be. And it was a tragedy. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking questions and just questioning why things happen the way they do, educating ourselves, allowing experts to look further into something and debunk it. If what I'm saying is crazy, debunk it, please, because I want, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So yeah. But 22 years later, questions still persist there. Definitely changed our world here.
I would like to add on. I mean, so the state of our union, even back then, there's something. Even if all this is nonsense, correct? Like, even if all of the conspiracies that we talk about on the show are debunked and we're proven wrong and whatever, we're just talking nonsense, I'd be fine with that. That being said, like, why are these narratives coming to the forefront? And that's the question that I want you to ask yourself. Like, why are these conspiracies, becoming more mainstream? It's because, in one way or another, the majority of the people really don't trust their government. You know what I mean? So, or their media sources, or whatever you want to call it, right? And it's just, so maybe we shouldn't be questioning it, and maybe we should just be telling the people that are our leaders to do better and to be more transparent, so these things don't come up and they don't arise. But obviously, I don't see the end of that anytime soon. I hate to be like negative Nancy, but You know, it's
Yeah.
just, I think it's a huge part of why there's misinformation, and sometimes the conspiracy is misinformation, you know, or, you know, sometimes the news source is misinformation. Well, let's do a better job. Like, there was more before the 24-hour news cycle, there was more integrity in journalism. You know, I worked in journalism for 5 years, you know, it's changed since I even worked in it, you know? So I just, yeah, let's do better. Let's ask questions. Let's try to do our best to not spread, you know, false information, but also say, hey, like, not be definitive in the way that, like, we tell a story, or what people's perception is, or what they think the story is, but just be open to it maybe. And from there we can figure out what's real and what's not, you know? I think that's what we have to do moving forward, especially in the internet age.
I agree. And just to piggyback off that, I think the way forward, if you want to quell these crazy accusations, I don't think it's just a way to say, hey, we got to dismiss wild conspiracy theories. Let's not ask questions. Like, if there's a truth, there's no harm in a debate. If you want to believe, hey, it's laser weapons and reptilians or something wild, right? Logic should say, hey, why do you believe that? Here's the information. And now, based on that, right, let's go down this path. Obviously, this path is not the way to go.
And the reason why I don't want people to, like, dismiss these crazy conspiracy theories is because sometimes a kernel of truth are in these stories, in these narratives, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes it's more than just a kernel. And yeah. And I think that's why we're seeing this trend, if you want to call it that, but we're seeing this social media idea where people are taking these ideas and running with it. And you're not seeing any slowdown with it because it's logically connecting more pieces than what they're being given from the official narrative.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, 9/11, it's a full one.
Yeah, we came into this thinking like a half hour. That was unrealistic. So
yeah, I knew it was going to go way over what I had prepared.
Well, until next time, guys.
Yeah. Well, follow us on the social medias, all that. Have a healthy distrust. Stay weird. Mike.
It's all good, homie. Let's call it.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.